Yeah.
Okay, we are on page 203. And we've graduated to step 3. Yay! So we're in the book of Numbers.
Numbers.
I'm not sure if we've been in the book of Numbers
There
before.
we go.
It might be new, which is cool.
203.
203, yeah.
203.
There's so much in Numbers. I think that maybe that'll be, once we're done with all the steps, maybe we'll start with Numbers and do a Bible study on Numbers. There's so many good things in there, but before we get into the step stuff, let's turn to 107
Oh, 7.
with the description of what Numbers is.
Oakley Dokley. What page?
107, or I'm sorry, 171.
I was going to say, we're going past
Yep.
Leviticus here, what?
171.
We went out of the book of Leviticus to learn, or Numbers, to learn about numbers.
This book has long been known as Numbers because it begins and ends with the census of Israel. However, the Hebrew name for the book, In the Wilderness, better describes what the book is about. While in the wilderness, God's people experienced not only God's kindness and patience, but also his holy discipline. They learned that their new freedom from Egyptian bondage included the responsibility to serve and obey God. So when I read that, it made me think about like a disobedient child. So if you see a child running towards the road or walking towards the road, as a parent, you would correct them gently at first. Hey, honey, don't run towards that road. And then as they continue getting closer to that threat, what you know is a threat for them, you would get louder and louder to the point where if they're too close, you'd run up to them and grab their arm and yank them back, and that might cause them some temporary pain, but it would prevent them from getting squished by a car. So that reminds me a lot of what's referred to here as God's holy discipline. So, and then, once something is done, then there is the discipline that comes afterwards in order to prevent that from happening again. So I also like the part where it says that when they were freed from Egypt, there was this new responsibility to serve and obey God. So it wasn't like you're free from Egypt, you do you. Whatever you want to do is fine. And it's similar to Jesus buying our freedom from slavery to sin. That it's not, now that we're free from it, it's not like we can just go do whatever we want. Our life belongs to him. Just the same as the Israelites' lives belonged to the Lord after they were set free by him. So after their exodus from Egypt, the Israelites moved quickly through the wilderness to the edge of the promised land. So they were right there. But, it's my favorite word. I always tell Kara, if you say anything, whatever you say after or before the word but, you might as well just throw it in the garbage. I really like spending time with you, but I think we should take a break. Or, anything like that. I think you're really great, but please delete my phone number. So, but when they saw the strength of the people living there, they became afraid and refused to conquer it. So that it's something new. It reminds me of what you were talking about with your new job, that it's something new. And it can be intimidating, something that's bigger and different than anything that we've ever experienced before. So as a result, they were sent back into the wilderness to wander for almost 40 years, just because they refused to act upon God's promises. So it wasn't just something big and new. It was something that God said, you're going to overcome this. Like, I already have the victory. You just got to walk it out. So it wasn't like they saw this big scary new thing and there was no advice or direction from the Lord. They were told that they would conquer the land, but they allowed their fear to be greater than their faith. Was that last week or the week before? We talked about it a few times. The fear and the faith, if we allow our fear to be bigger than our faith, then we can't walk in the blessings of the Lord. So Numbers ends with the Israelites again poised at the border of the Promised Land. 40 years of wilderness lessons had taught them that God's power was available to all who trusted and obeyed him. The Israelites' experiences illustrate the importance of a practical faith in God. They show us the blessed fruits of obedience and the disastrous consequence of sin. So I'm sure it was last week that we were talking about there's life and death in front of you, and choose life. So you get the blessed fruit or the disastrous consequences. Those are the two things. We see how God's love is shown not only by his gracious forgiveness, but also through his wise discipline and call to accountability. Ooh, that's like a swear word almost. You mean I can't just quietly tell the Lord that I'm sorry for what I did? I have to be accountable to my friends and my family and things. Ouch.
Well, I think God held them pretty accountable.
The Israelites?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
There was a lot of instances. I think there was one instance where the earth opened up and 27,000 of them died in one shot.
Yep.
So there was a lot.
Well, when I was reading Numbers, another example of their accountability, I wasn't reading all of it, but just a little bit leading up to where our study is today, there was they were whining about how they were in the wilderness and they wished that they could go back to Egypt where they were in bondage, and they hated the manna. It was gross. And it was there's this, and I know I've said it before, can we have some ketchup for this manna or something? But it's this incredible food that has all of the nutrients that you need, that you get every day, and it's
literally comes from heaven.
Right,
every
I don't
morning.
want that, I'd rather have whatever Egyptian milk that tastes like slavery. So, and then
yeah. So I don't want to go off on a whole tangent about Israel, but basically they had, I've heard different numbers, but with a group that large, if they kept marching straight, they would have reached the promised land in 12 days. So all of the subsequent miracles and everything that God had to do was because they kept not trusting him. And then they broke covenant with him over and over and over again. So they had to keep their pace in the wilderness, circling the same mountain for 40 years until everyone was gone, right? So,
wow.
But it was a 12-day journey, even for a group that size.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I'll finish the snake story, but that reminds me of something else that I was thinking of, that I've been thinking of for a while, with the trajectory that God has us on. It's like a spiral. So he wants us to go up. But if we're unable to overcome whatever thorn we're experiencing, we'll just go in a circle instead of going up. The Lord wanted them to go up, but they just kept going around in a circle. So when they were complaining about the manna in the desert or the wilderness, God sent snakes, poisonous snakes, to bite them and kill them. So that's more of a consequence than accountability, I guess. And then they're like, oh, Moses, we're so sorry now that we're suffering, that we said mean things about you and God. Please go to God and save us. So Moses is like, fine. So he went to God, and God told him to make a replica of the serpent and put it on his staff, a bronze replica on his staff, and then any who looked upon that serpent would be cured from, the poison from the other serpents, and that was a type of Jesus Christ, like the typology sort of thing, that if we look upon him, he'll cure us from whatever it is that vexes us.
Yeah, because Jesus was made a curse and hung on the cross, right?
Yep.
I think he was made a curse for us.
Yep. So, and the modern medical industry stole that sign.
Yep.
So, yeah, because that's where I want to look instead of Jesus. Okay. Anyways, don't get me started on that. So, where was I last paragraph? It is usually in our wilderness experiences that we discover the true meaning of life, faith, and a personal relationship with God. God graciously offers us deliverance and cleansing, but our newfound freedom carries with it personal responsibility. We need to act on God's promises and follow the program he sets out for us. If we do, he will lead us through the wilderness. He will never allow us to wander forever. So that's like the wilderness times in our lives help us to strengthen our relationship with the Lord. They help us to rely on him, and it prepares us for the blessings that he has for us. Because God gives blessings to many different people, and due to lack of character, many people can't hold on to the blessings that the Lord has. So it's in these wilderness seasons that we build the character to sustain the blessings that the Lord has for us. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So the first, on the bottom line down there, to demonstrate historically that God's great mercy and forgiveness towards his people are consistent with the firm, loving discipline he shows when they disobey. So again, that's a hard concept to think about, firm, loving discipline, because usually I want to think of discipline as a bad thing, and I don't want to be disciplined. But again, there's the contrast of conviction and condemnation, that there's a righteous discipline and an unrighteous discipline. When a guy gets home from work and he had a rough day and he's really mad, and his kid comes in and annoys him and he gives him a smack or whatever, that's unrighteous discipline. But if his kid goes and hits the dog and then he has to go spend time in his room for timeout, that's a righteous discipline. So it's recognizing that there's a righteous and an unrighteous discipline. Okay, let's plop over to 203. Did you have a thing?
Did I have a thing? Always. I'm trying to behave today.
I'm gonna make you come over here.
Sure. So like the Israelites, like for sure progressed from, like being the like the disobedient children, and like receiving discipline, to like outright idolatry and adultery against God, right? And there's like a whole thing, like it's a large revelation, it's a whole nother teaching, but when like Jesus explained how when like your husband dies, as a wife, then like you're free to marry another, he was actually talking about Israel. And like you can prove it scripturally that he actually, like on the cross, like broke covenant with Israel, which a lot of people don't want to hear about. So they went all the way from like being like disobedient children into like complete adultery, like for generations and generations and generations. So it's a hard thing. It's a big thing.
That is a big thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's not where we are today.
I know.
Today we're telling the story of the talking donkey.
Oh, nice.
So prior to this little section here, Israel again was in the wilderness, and they had conquered 2 kingdoms already. They were walking around, and the Lord favored Israel, and they conquered 2 kingdoms. So Balak is the king of Moab, and his name means empty. I looked up the names today, and his father was Zippor, which means bird, which is whatever, empty bird. So he saw the Israelites approaching, and he pooped his pants because he was scared that they were going to come in and take over his kingdom as well. So there was this prophet, his name was Balaam, which means the destroyer of people. And from what I could find, I believe he was from Canaan. So he was a Canaanite, which is interesting. So, but I mean, regardless of whether or not that's true, he was not an Israelite, but he still heard the voice of the Lord. He was still in communion with God, and he was still considered a prophet, which he was given the ability to speak the word of the Lord. So that's an interesting thing.
Yeah, and there's other references to people like that in the Bible. Like Moses' stepdad was a priest towards God, and he was
Jethro.
Yeah, Jethro, and he wasn't an Israelite, right?
Oh, interesting.
So, yeah, so
I didn't know that.
yep. And also, like Melchizedek and other,
Well, that was before
Mhm.
before the Israelites were.
Yeah.
Cool. So, so he knew of Balaam. Did I tell you what his name means? Destroyer of people.
Wow.
And his father is Beor, which is a burning.
Oh.
So Balak knew that Balaam, he sent his people to him and said, listen here, buddy, I need your help with, getting rid of these Israelites, because I know that blessings fall on whoever you bless and curses fall on whoever you curse. Which is interesting because that reminds me of God's promise to Abraham in Genesis 12, that I'll bless whoever blesses you and curse whoever curses you. It's just an interesting it's a little different, but that's what it reminded me of. So, Balaam said, make me 7 altars and do 7 sacrifices so I can go and talk to the Lord. So they did. Balak's people did that, and Balaam went and talked to the Lord, and the Lord's like, no, bro, you can't curse these people. They're blessed, so you can't curse them. They're my people. So Balaam goes back and says, listen, I can't do nothing for you. God said these are his blessed people, so thanks, but later. So they went back to Balak and said he can't do anything for us. So Balak is like, well, maybe he just needs more money. So he sends more distinguished people with a promise of more money for this cursing. So again, he has to make the altars, slaughter and burn the sacrifices, and he goes before the Lord. And the Lord says again, these are my blessed people. And I can't, there's nothing I can do. So where am I now? So he says, even if Balak were to give me his palace filled with silver and gold, I would be powerless to do anything against the will of the Lord my God. But stay here one more night, and I will see if the Lord has anything else to say to me. So that night, God came to Balaam and told him, since these men have come for you, get up and go with them, but do only what I tell you to do. So this here, I don't have an answer to what happens here. This is 22:21. So the next morning, Balaam got up, saddled his donkey, and started off with the Moabite officials. But God was angry that Balaam was going, so he sent the angel of the Lord to stand in the road and block his way. So I don't understand what happened there. So at night, God said, you can go with them, but then in the morning, God was angry that he was going. So I tried to figure that out, and I cannot figure out why that is. Yeah, so, but anyways, that's not where we are today. So God sends the angel of the Lord, and he's riding his donkey, right? So the donkey sees the angel of the Lord, but Balaam doesn't see the angel of the Lord. So the donkey goes over and what does he do? Oh, bolted off the road. So he went off the road, and then Balaam beats the donkey. And then he gets back on the donkey, and he's walking, and the angel of the Lord is again in a narrower part of the road. And the donkey tries to squeeze on the side of him and ends up squishing Balaam's foot. So Balaam beats the donkey again and then gets back on the donkey. I know, it's horrible. So the third time, Balaam is on the donkey, and the angel of the Lord stands in a place where the donkey is unable to go around. So the donkey lays down, and Balaam beats him again. And in verse 28, it said, the Lord gave the donkey the ability to speak. What have I done to you that deserves your beating me 3 times? It asked Balaam. Now, instead of being like, why is this donkey talking to me? He answers the donkey. And says, you made me look like a fool.
Bob will slip that part out.
If I had a sword with me, I would kill you. But I am the same donkey you have ridden all your life, the donkey answered. Have I ever done anything like this before? No, Balaam admitted. So that just made me think of like being too grounded in the natural realm to recognize that sometimes there's things going on outside of my vision. So then the Lord opened Balaam's eyes, and he saw the angel of the Lord in the roadway with a drawn sword in his hand. Balaam bowed his head and fell face down on the ground before him. Now, I thought that was interesting because anytime that it's just an angel in the scriptures, and someone falls down before an angel, like to worship an angel, they're always told to stand up. So there's an argument that, well, not an argument, but a discussion that people say that the angel of the Lord was Jesus.
I believe that.
I believe it as well, and this is a good a good reason. Yeah, a good indication. Yeah,
Like another example was with Joshua, where the conversation where Joshua asked the angel of the Lord, are you with us or for them, or are you for us or for them? And he said neither. And that was after he bowed down and worshipped him, and he was not told to stop, right? Like to stop worshiping. So.
Okay.
Yep. So the angel of the Lord says, why did you beat your donkey those 3 times? Look, I have come to block your way, because you are stubbornly resisting me. 3 times the donkey saw me and shied away. Wait, hold on a second.
Hey,
Come to block your way, because you are stubbornly resisting me.
Mm-hmm.
So that's probably an answer to the beginning there. Okay, I'd have to do more study to figure that out.
Yeah.
So otherwise, I would certainly have killed you by now and spare the donkey. Then Balaam confessed to the angel of the Lord, I have sinned. I didn't realize you were standing in the road to block my way. I will return home if you are against my going. So he didn't see God when he should have. He didn't know that God was there when he should have known he was there. Again, because he was focused too much on the natural and not enough on the supernatural. His eyes were closed to what the Lord was doing. But the angel of the Lord told Balaam, go with these men, but say only what I tell you. So Balaam went with Balak's officials. When King Balak heard that Balaam was on the way, he went out to meet him at a Moabite town on the Arnon River. Okay, so then he's like, didn't I tell you to come right away? And Balaam's like, you're not the boss of me. And he's like, I can only say what, God tells me to say. So then chapter 23, and this is our focus chapter today. Balaam said to King Balak, build me 7 altars here and prepare 7 young bulls and 7 rams for me to sacrifice. Balak followed his instructions, and the 2 of them sacrificed a young bull and a ram on each altar. Then Balaam said to Balak, stand here by your burnt offerings, and I will go to see if the Lord will respond to me. Then I will tell you whatever he reveals to me. So Balaam went alone to the top of a bare hill, and God met him there. Balaam said to him, I have prepared 7 altars and have sacrificed a young bull and a ram on each altar. The Lord gave Balaam a message for the king Balak. Then he said, go to Balak and give him my message. So Balaam returned and found the king standing beside his burnt offerings with all the officials of Moab. This was the message Balaam delivered. Balak summoned me to come from Aram. The king of Moab brought me from the eastern hills. Come, he said, curse Jacob for me. Come and announce Israel's doom. But how can I curse those whom God has not cursed? How can I condemn those whom the Lord has not condemned? I see them from the cliff tops. I watch them from the hills. I see a people who live by themselves, set apart from other nations. Who can count Jacob's descendants as numerous as dust? Who can count even a fourth of Israel's people? Let me die like the righteous. Let my life end like theirs. Then King Balak demanded of Balaam, what have you done to me? I brought you to curse my enemies. Instead, you have blessed them. But Balaam replied, I will speak only the message that the Lord puts in my mouth. Balaam's second message. Then King Balak told him, come with me to another place. There you will see another part of the nation of Israel, but not all of them. Curse at least that many. So Balak took Balaam to the plateau of Zaphim on Pisgah Peak. He built 7 altars there and offered a young bull and a ram on each altar. Then Balaam said to the king, stand here by your burnt offerings while I go over there to meet the Lord. And the Lord met Balaam and gave him a message. Then he said, go to Balak and give him my message. So Balaam returned and found the king standing beside his burnt offerings with the officials of Moab. What did the Lord say? Balak said eagerly. This was the message Balaam delivered. Rise up, Balak, and listen. Hear me, son of Zippor. God is not a man, so he does not lie. He is not human, so he does not change his mind. Has he ever spoken and failed to act? Has he ever promised and not carried it through? Listen, I received a command to bless. God has blessed, and I cannot reverse it. No misfortune is in his plan for Jacob. No trouble is in store for Israel. For the Lord their God is with them. He has been proclaimed their king. God brought them out of Egypt. For them, he is as a wild ox, as strong as a wild ox. No curse can touch Jacob. No magic has any power against Israel. For now it will be said of Jacob, what wonders God has done for Israel. These people rise up like a lioness, like a majestic lion rousing itself. They refuse to rest until they have feasted on prey, drinking the blood of the slaughtered. Then Balak said to Balaam, fine, but if you won't curse them, at least don't bless them. But Balaam replied to Balak, didn't I tell you that I can only do what the Lord tells me? Balaam's third message. Then King Balak said to Balaam, come, I will take you to one more place. Perhaps it will please God to let you curse them from there. He just doesn't get it. And again, I mean, that ties into like recovery stuff and just life stuff. All right, I'll pause there and talk about it because that's something I wanted to talk about. That how often have I thought that a change of scenery would change my circumstance? like, well, maybe if I stopped hanging out with these people, or maybe if I got an apartment over here, or maybe if I tried working over here, or maybe if I worked a different shift, or, you know, any of those things, you know, maybe I moved to another state. But like it is here, circumstances are what they are, and in that account, wherever I go, I take myself with me. So wherever he's going, he's taking that same thing, the word of the Lord, with him. So that's a nice little parallel there to just remember that changing places, like it's the grass is greener syndrome. Well, if I just get over there, you know, the grass would be just as green in my yard if I'd water it. Remember, we talk a lot about water. So if that dude's grass is greener than mine, he's probably watering it more than I am. Sorry, segue. Back in. So Balak took Balaam to the top of Mount Peor, overlooking the wasteland. Balaam again told Balak, build me 7 altars and prepare 7 young bulls and 7 rams for me to sacrifice. So Balak did as Balaam ordered and offered a young bull and a ram on each altar. By now, Balaam realized that the Lord was determined to bless Israel, so he did not resort to divination as before. Instead, he turned and looked out towards the wilderness, where he saw the people of Israel camped tribe by tribe. Then the Spirit of God came upon him, and this is the message he delivered. Okay, so I got to pause before I read this. So this time is different than any of the other times, because it says this time he did not resort to divination. So he didn't call upon the Lord. He waited for the Lord to come to him. So even though he still did do this whole altar and burning thing, he didn't go up and you know, Lord. He went and just waited for the Lord to speak to him. And then this message that God gave him, it's really beautiful. So
who knows why is important, like verse 2, where he saw the people of Israel camped tribe by tribe. Have you guys heard about how they used to camp?
Tribe by tribe.
So like you can actually look, I think it's in Exodus, or maybe the beginning of Numbers. They were actually told, like dimensionally, north, south, east, and west, they always camped exactly the same. And there was, you know, like tribes that had a larger area than other tribes because they were bigger and smaller tribes and all that stuff. But if you actually look at it, the way that they camped, if you draw out the numbers and make little boxes and do it all to scale, like it makes the cross.
Oh, neat.
So like the whole time that they traveled throughout the wilderness, like for 40 years, every time they would stop and pitch tents, they would camp in the shape of a cross, in the exact same orientation towards the sun.
I've seen pictures of that.
Yeah.
that's really cool.
Yeah.
So that's what Balaam was looking at when he got these next 2 messages.
Right.
This is the message of Balaam, son of Beor, the message of the man whose eyes see clearly. So now his eyes see clearly. The message of one who hears the word of God, who sees a vision from the Almighty, who bows down with eyes wide open. How beautiful are your tents, O Jacob! How lovely are your homes, O Israel! They spread before me like palm groves, like gardens by the riverside. They are like tall trees planted by the Lord, like cedars beside the waters. Water will flow from their buckets. Their offspring will have all they need. Their king will be greater than Agag. Their kingdom will be exalted. God brought them out of Egypt. For them, he is as strong as a wild ox. He devours all the nations that oppose him, breaking their bones in pieces, shooting them with arrows. Like a lion, Israel crouches and lies down, like a lioness who dares to arouse her. Blessed is everyone who blesses you, O Israel, and cursed is everyone who curses you. Again, that goes back to the Genesis 12. Blessed is everyone who blesses, cursed is everyone who curses. That was, I think he was still Abram at that point.
think so.
Yep, and that whole prophecy can apply to the church, like the New Testament church.
King Balak flew into a rage against Balaam. He angrily clapped his hands and shouted, I called you to curse my enemies. Instead, you have blessed them 3 times. Now get out of here. Go back home. I promised to reward you richly, but the Lord has kept you from your reward. So again, like the difference between the natural and the supernatural. So I think even here, Balaam might have had it in his mind that he could still have that monetary reward, like that natural monetary reward. But I think that his real reward, the supernatural reward, was seeing the beauty of Israel, catching a glimpse of, what God's chosen people were. So then Balaam told Balak, don't you remember what I told your messengers? I said, even if Balak were to give me his palace filled with silver and gold, I would be powerless to do anything against the will of the Lord. I told you that I could say only what the Lord says. Now I am returning to my own people. But first, let me tell you what the Israelites will do to your people in the future. This is the message Balaam delivered. This is the message of Balaam, son of Beor, the message of the man whose eyes see clearly, the message of one who hears the words of God, who has knowledge from the Most High, who sees a vision from the Almighty, who bows down with eyes wide open. I see him, but not here and now. I perceive him, but far in the distant future. A star will rise from Jacob. A scepter will emerge from Israel. It will crush the heads of Moab's people, cracking the skulls of the people of Sheth. Edom will be taken over, and Seir, its enemy, will be conquered, while Israel marches on in triumph. A ruler will rise in Jacob, and who will destroy the survivors? Who will destroy the survivors of Ir? Then Balaam looked over towards the people of Amalek and delivered this message. Amalek was the greatest of nations, but its destiny is destruction. Then he looked over towards the Kenites and delivered this message. Your home is secure. Your nest is set in the rocks. But the Kenites will be destroyed when Assyria takes you captive. Balaam concluded his message by saying, alas, who can survive unless God has willed it? Ships will come from the coasts of Cyprus. They will oppress Assyria, afflict Eber, but they too will be utterly destroyed. Then Balaam left and returned home, and Balak also went on his way. So he was talking about Jesus in that last little section there. And I would venture to say that all of these, like these little sections that are different, the messages, I bet they sound beautiful in Hebrew. I bet they rhyme and they're sing-songy and really nice. But just the difference of the last 2 messages that he gets when the Spirit of God came upon him versus him, calling out, like that receiving, and how that changed his message, and it changed that his eyes were open and that he sees clearly and that he hears clearly. So I just think it's really, really cool. Let's pop over back to the devotional on 203. Step 3, we made a decision to turn our wills and our lives over to the care of God. It is not uncommon to link our perceptions about God to our childhood experiences with people who played powerful roles in our lives. If we have been victimized in the past by people who were capricious, abusive, distant, uncaring, or incompetent, we may now anticipate these qualities in God. Now, that's a pretty common idea that people will often ascribe the attributes of their earthly father onto God.
Yeah.
So if my earthly father was angry and punished me every time that, I stepped off the line, then that's how I would view God, that God is angry and punishing. If my father was absent from my life, and just popped in every once in a while, that's how I would view God, that he was like a hands-off, do whatever sort of person. So, but that's okay. It's okay that we do that, because once we recognize we're doing it, we can change it. So just because God is a power greater than we are, and the people who victimized us represented a power greater than we were, we must not conclude that God will harm us if we entrust our lives to him. Jesus tells us that he didn't entrust himself to people because he knew what was in their hearts. Nevertheless, he voluntarily turned his life over to the will of God the Father. It is better to take refuge in the Lord than to trust in people. Psalm 118:8. We may have learned in the past that putting confidence in people brings only pain and disappointment. We can't let this keep us from ever trusting again. In working through step 3, we can make a healthy decision to turn our wills and our lives over to the only one worthy of being trusted. The Bible tells us God is not a man, so he does not lie. He is not human, so he does not change his mind. Numbers 23:19. And God has said, I will never fail you. I will never abandon you. Hebrews 13:5. We know that we can't make it all alone, but now we can stop being the victim. We can turn our lives over to someone who is really able to care for our needs. So I think about, it's 3-tiered. So you have the victim, you have the survivor, and you have someone who's resilient. So the victim is somebody, and again, they're all, something terrible happened in their lives. All 3 of these types of people. And there's no denying that something terrible happened in their lives. So the victim is someone that is subjected to that event, that they define themselves by that event. And then that's a state of weakness. That's being in a weakened state. So then after that, you'd have the survivor. So that person, again, same scenario, whatever it was, that person defines themselves by overcoming that event. Like, yeah, this happened to me, but I overcame it. And the person that's resilient, again, something happened to them. They don't define themselves by what happened. They don't define themselves by the fact that they overcame it. That's just their nature. Their nature is, again, my focus is on that snake, on that man on the cross. It doesn't matter what any of this is. He already overcame it, so I'm going to overcome it. And that's resiliency. That's the difference between being a victim, being a survivor, and being resilient, is where the focus is. So the victim, the focus is on the event. The survivor, the focus is on overcoming it. And the resilient person, the focus is on the Lord. So